KITV4 News and CivilBeat.com present our Commitment 2014 debate for the U.S. Senate Democratic primary.
It's been nearly 2 years since the death of Senator Daniel Inouye, and two veteran Democrats want to fill the time that's left on his term. Will it be the person appointed to the seat?
Well, my passion is building and protecting the middle class in the state of Hawaii.
Or will it be the person who was Inouye's choice?
People recognize and know my record, my experience, and what I've done.
Tonight, they'll try to win your vote. Good evening, and thank you for joining us for the U.S. Senate Democratic primary debate, hosted by KITV4 and CivilBeat.com. I'm Paula Akana. I'll be your moderator tonight. We'd like to thank the Democratic frontrunners for joining us here tonight, Senator Brian Schatz and Representative Colleen Hanabusa. Mahalo for being with us. And our panelists this evening are KITV4 News reporters Andrew Pereira, Catherine Cruz, and Chad Blair from CivilBeat.com. Now, in addition to our live broadcast, this debate is being streamed live on KITV.com and CivilBeat.com. So let's go to our web center where we find KITV4's Laura Yamada. Laura?
Hi there, Paula. Yeah, we've had our live wire up for about a half an hour now. Really easy to join in. Just go to KITV.com to the top of the page there, and you can join in. We're looking for questions, and we're going to use some of these questions to ask our candidates a little later in the debate. We're also checking out questions on Facebook as well as Twitter, hashtag KITV debate. So join in. There's still time. And again, as we mentioned, a little later in the debate, we'll be picking some of those questions live. Back to you, Paula.
All right, thanks, Laura. Now, here are the rules for tonight's debate. When a candidate is asked a question by one of our panelists, he or she will have 1 minute to answer. The opposing candidate will then have 45 seconds for a rebuttal. Now, later in the broadcast, the candidates will have an opportunity to ask questions of each other. All right, we're going to begin now with KITV4's Andrew Pereira with a question for Representative Hanabusa.
Representative Hanabusa, good to see you as always.
Good to see you.
Representative Hanabusa, before Senator Dan Inouye passed away in December 2012, his dying wish was to have you serve out the remainder of his term. How important should the senator's dying wish be to Hawaii voters?
Andrew, you know, I can't tell you what a great honor it was to have the senator ask that I succeed him, because as you know, there's probably no one like him in the state of Hawaii, and we probably will not see another Daniel K. Inouye. Each individual voter, however, will have to make that decision for him and herself as to how much weight or how much influence that recommendation or that wish will have upon their decision. I'm here asking for their support to fill the remainder of his term, and this is the remainder of his term, because I believe that I'm the best person qualified to do that. And I do want to say, however, that to have the senator's endorsement, and even Senator Akaka's endorsement as well, along with Governor Ariyoshi and Governor Cayetano, is something that I will always cherish and I will always have in my heart as an indication of how they viewed me and my ability to serve. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Rebuttal, Senator.
Senator Inouye is an American hero. Senator Inouye is all of our hero from the state of Hawaii, and my feeling about the best way to continue his great legacy of service through generations. He built what is modern Hawaii. He built the East-West Center. He built our transportation infrastructure. He understood that it was necessary to look out for regular people and working families and middle-class families. And my approach to being in the United States Senate is to try to continue his legacy of humble service and working hard for middle-class families and working-class families.
Thank you.
President Obama was recently ranked as the worst president since World War II in a poll by Quinnipiac University. Senator Schatz, you spearheaded the president's local campaign in 2008, and he's endorsed you for this race. How do you define his presidency?
Well, I think he's been a very strong president. I think he has been, unfortunately, in a position to face unprecedented obstruction from the Tea Party. I think it's really important to understand how dedicated they have been to undermining every bit of his legislative legacy, and still he has been able to keep many of his promises. He's been able to wind down the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. He was able to pass the Affordable Care Act. He's taking action on climate. He's been a leader in civil rights, in gay rights, in women's rights. He's pushing for immigration reform. And so I think facing unprecedented obstruction, President Obama has been an effective president. I'm proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with him. I'm proud to have his endorsement. I'm proud to be one of his staunchest allies in the United States Senate.
Rebuttal, Representative.
There is no question President Obama is one of us. So, and he carries with that the warmth and affection of people of Hawaii and the aloha that we have for him. I must say, however, that where I have parted with the president is in the issue of Syria and Iraq. I have a very difficult time with the fact that he invoked the War Powers Act, yes, the War Powers Act, just recently in his actions in Iraq, and that I believe that he has to explain to the people why he's going to potentially put us into another war in Iraq, a sectarian civil war.
Congresswoman Hanabusa, this question is to you first. For years, the government either ignored problems at the Veterans Administration, Veterans Affairs Department, or they just didn't understand how bad the problems were. But one thing is clear, the VA is broken. So how does Congress make sure the government fixes this problem and in a timely manner?
You know, I was hoping that the president would give General Shinseki the opportunity, like he did to Kathleen Sebelius, to address the problems. However, having said that, let us be very clear that what we need is a short-term fix and a long-term fix. This is the one situation where Congress is acting. Both houses have passed a veterans bill that will give us the short-term fix, such as to put more money in doctors and nurses, and to, after 40 days of wait time, to be able to then have outside help. We also support in Hawaii the EVA Veterans Clinic, which is of course going to be named in honor of Senator Akaka. But those are the short-term issues. What we have to keep in mind is that we're here to serve the veterans, and we must make sure that they are served. And how we do that is to be sure that we make sure that we hear them and we address the issues that they're faced. Wait is just not acceptable.
Thank you very much. Rebuttal, Senator.
Well, the legislation that I'm supporting will double veteran services on the island of Oahu. It will increase funding VA-wide, nationwide, by about $500 million. It will enable us to fire incompetent or dishonest managers. But here's where Colleen and I differ. Colleen has proposed a partnership between VA and the Department of the Navy on Guam to invest in facilities on Guam. Look, there are 127,000 veterans in the Asia-Pacific region. 117,000 of them are in the state of Hawaii. I think we have to focus our time, our financial resources, and our energies in the state of Hawaii and not invest on the island of Guam.
Thank you very much, Senator.
Senator Schatz, good to see you, sir.
Nice to see you.
Senator Schatz, the Department of Interior is wrapping up meetings here in Hawaii to gather input on federal recognition for Native Hawaiians. As a matter of fact, a meeting was held tonight in Lahaina. Can you describe what Native Hawaiian nation would look like and how non-Hawaiian residents would be affected?
It's a very good question. Look, separate is not equal, and it is a long past time that there be a government-to-government relationship between Native Hawaiians and the federal government on an equal footing with the Alaska Natives and on an equal footing with American Indian tribes. But here's the issue. Self-determination means self-determination. In other words, until there is consensus within the Hawaiian community about exactly how this Native Hawaiian governing entity would be configured and what kind of relationship it will have with the state, county, and federal government, the congressional delegation, other political leaders can't race in front of that consensus. And so what the Department of Interior and the Department of Justice are starting is a conversation. But that conversation ultimately has to be led by the Hawaiian community. We're here to facilitate, and if there is consensus, then we can take it across the finish line. But the first step is to develop consensus and to listen to Native Hawaiians as they endeavor on the long road to self-determination.
All right, thank you. Your rebuttal, Representative.
Let there be no mistake. This issue is about justice. It is about self-determination. It is about the fact that in 1993, the United States apologized to the Native Hawaiians for the illegal overthrow of the Queen. And since that time, the reconciliation, no reconciliation has taken place. Know what these hearings are about. It is about whether or not the Department of Interior will propose a rule And that rule is to reestablish a government-to-government relationship with the Native Hawaiian community. Each one of those words needs to be defined. And I hope what Interior is doing is listening to what the people are saying, going back and analyzing exactly what is it that they're telling the people they want to do.
Thank you very much, Representative.